Some places were never meant to be disturbed, buried beneath dust and time. They carry the weight of dark histories and forgotten horrors. When the young couple decided to breathe new life into Black Hollow Asylum, they never expected the nightmares that would awaken with their efforts. Some buildings aren't haunted by ghosts, some are haunted by the echoes of madness itself. Emma and Jack Miller had always been dreamers. After years of working corporate jobs, they finally decided to pursue their shared passion, restoring old, forgotten buildings and turning them into boutique hotels. When they stumbled upon Black Hollow Asylum, an abandoned psychiatric hospital nestled deep in the woods, they saw not a decaying ruin, but potential. Its towering stone walls and sprawling corridors, though eerie, seemed like the perfect canvas for their next project. Locals warned them about the asylum's grim history. Built in the early 1900s, it housed hundreds of patients suffering from severe mental illnesses. Over the years, it became notorious for its inhumane treatments and brutal experimental therapies. Stories of patients disappearing, horrific screams echoing through the halls, and doctors rumored to dabble in the occult filled the town's folklore. The asylum had been shut down in the 1970s after a fire claimed several lives, and it had remained abandoned ever since. But Emma and Jack brushed off the warnings. To them, it was just superstition. They bought the property at a steal and began renovations, determined to transform it into a beautiful retreat. At first, everything went smoothly. Contractors worked tirelessly. The old hospital's rooms were redesigned, and the decaying structure was gradually coming back to life. The couple even joked about the occasional odd creak in the floors or flicker of lights, blaming it on the building's age. After months of hard work, their hotel was finally ready for its grand opening. It wasn't fully booked yet, but one guest had made a reservation for the opening weekend, a man named Mr. Daniel Reeves, who claimed he was passing through and needed a quiet place to stay. Excited to host their first guest, Emma and Jack greeted him warmly. Mr. Reeves was quiet, polite, but something about him seemed off. He moved stiffly, spoke in a low, flat tone, and his eyes darted around the room as if he was expecting something to leap out from the shadows. "I hope you don't mind," Mr. Reeves said as he checked in. "I prefer to be left alone during my stay. No disturbances." It was an odd request, but the Millers respected his privacy. After showing him to his room, one of the refurbished patient quarters, they went back to preparing for the weekend's opening. That night, as they were locking up, Emma noticed something strange. The lights in the hall leading to Mr. Reeves' room flickered, casting long, distorted shadows against the walls. Jack, ever the pragmatist, chalked it up to old wiring. But when the lights blinked out entirely, leaving the hallway in complete darkness, Emma felt an unsettling chill creep down her spine. Over the next few days, things began to take a disturbing turn. The first morning, Emma and Jack noticed that Mr. Reeves hadn't come down for breakfast. Respecting his wish for privacy, they left a tray outside his door. When they returned a few hours later, the tray was untouched, but the door to his room was slightly ajar. Curiosity got the better of Jack. He knocked lightly, but there was no answer. Pushing the door open, they were greeted by an empty room. The bed was untouched, the windows locked, but there was no sign of Mr. Reeves. His luggage was still there, his jacket draped over a chair. Maybe he stepped out early, Jack suggested, but even he didn't seem convinced. That night, the strange occurrences escalated. Emma woke up in the middle of the night to the sound of muffled whispers. At first, she thought Jack was talking in his sleep, but when she turned, she realized he was still fast asleep beside her. The whispers seemed to be coming from outside the room. She quietly slipped out of bed and tiptoed to the door, pressing her ear against the cold wood. The voices were faint and intelligible, but unmistakably human. As she opened the door, they stopped. The hallway was empty, but a cold draft blew past her, carrying with it the faint scent of something burning like charred wood. The next morning, when they went to check on Mr. Reeves again, he was gone. His luggage remained, but the man had vanished. They searched the entire hotel, but there was no trace of him. Concerned, Emma and Jack decided to dig deeper into the asylum's history. They visited the local library and found old records detailing the asylum's dark past. One name kept appearing: Dr. Edward Reeves, the head psychiatrist in charge during the final years of the asylum's operation. Dr. Reeves was notorious for his cruel methods, and many of the patients he treated had died under mysterious circumstances. The more they read, the more disturbing the connections became. The description of Dr. Reeves bore an eerie resemblance to their guest, Mr. Reeves. Could it have been a coincidence, or had something more sinister followed them into the hotel? Determined to get to the bottom of the mystery, Jack decided to search the basement, which had remained mostly untouched during the renovations. Down there, amidst the cobwebs and dust, they found something chilling: a hidden room behind a rusted door. Inside were old medical instruments, rusted chains bolted to the walls, and documents detailing Dr. Reeves' experiments on the patients. The room reeked of rot and decay, as if it had been frozen in time. In the corner of the room, they found a journal. It belonged to Dr. Reeves, and its pages were filled with disturbing entries. He had performed exorcisms, not as a means of salvation, but as a twisted form of control over his patients. He believed that by invoking the spirits of the mentally ill, he could transcend death itself. As they flipped through the journal, Emma gasped. Scrawled on the final page, in erratic handwriting, were the words, "The guests will return, one by one, to finish what was started." That evening, the atmosphere in the hotel grew oppressive. The lights flickered more frequently, and strange sounds, scratching, distant screams, and that unnerving whispering echoed through the halls. Emma and Jack barricaded themselves in their room, unsure of what to do. At midnight, there was a knock on the door. The same cold draft swept through the room as Jack opened it, revealing the darkened hallway. No one was there, but as they looked down the corridor, they saw him, Mr. Reeves, or whoever or whatever he truly was. His figure stood at the end of the hall, staring at them with hollow eyes. His face twisted into a smile, a sickening, unnatural grin. Suddenly, doors along the hallway began to open, one by one, and shadowy figures emerged, patients long dead, their faces contorted in agony, their eyes vacant and lifeless. They moved slowly toward Emma and Jack, their footsteps echoing like the ticking of a clock. Panic set in. The couple fled the room, running through the labyrinthine halls of the hotel. But no matter which way they turned, the ghosts of Black Hollow Asylum pursued them. The walls seemed to close in, the air thick with the weight of unspeakable horrors. As they reached the front door, they found it locked. The shadowy figures were closing in, their cold, dead hands reaching out to claim them. Just when all seemed lost, the sound of shattering glass filled the air. The ghosts disappeared, leaving Emma and Jack breathless and terrified. Emma and Jack left Black Hollow Asylum that night, never to return. They abandoned the project. The hotel, left unfinished, its doors forever closed. No one in town questioned why, for they already knew the asylum was cursed. The souls of the patients who had suffered there would never rest, and anyone who dared to disturb their peace would pay the price. As for Mr. Reeves, his true identity remains a mystery. Whether he was the ghost of Dr. Edward Reeves, seeking to continue his twisted experiments, or something far worse, no one will ever know. The asylum and all its horrors remain untouched, waiting for the next unsuspecting soul to cross its threshold. Some buildings carry the weight of their past, and some histories are better left forgotten. Black Hollow Asylum is one of those places, a place where madness lingers and the dead never truly leave.